Have you ever thought what would happen if you were a god for a day? How about if a god were human for a day? In this case, what if the human embodiment of death literally takes a holiday? And why is death mortal for a day? Hello again and welcome back to Graphic Descriptions, and today we're going to be taking a look at Neil Gaiman and Chris Bachalo's review of Death, the High Cost of Living. When I initially bought this trade, I wasn't a reader of any of Neil Gaiman's work, and Sandman had ended almost a decade prior. I only had read the last 5 or 6 issues of the series, and that was years before, like I said, before I read this trade. So I remembered nothing. So I had no idea who most of the characters were, and in this case, however, it really doesn't matter whether or not you're a fan of Sandman comics. This is an easy read and it's very relatable. At the beginning of the story, there's a prologue where in England we find a homeless woman named Mad Hetty claiming to be 250 years old. She's confronted by several uncuffed youths while she's waiting for the title character of the book to arrive. The story really begins when we meet a kid named Sexton Furnival, who is bored, and of course he does what any bored kid would do, write a suicide note. Because of course he does. He then goes to a junkyard and almost kills himself by accident, which is really kind of ironic, and he's saved by a girl named Dee Dee. The story is sort of a hero's quest. Dee Dee and Sexton have to find Mad Hetty's heart. They meet an odd assortment of characters and have interesting interactions, some funny, some tragic. Before I go on, I need anyone who's even thinking about reading this to understand that yes, this is a comic, but it's a Vertigo comic. So don't go expecting any superhero conventions. There are some villains, but nothing they plan is earth-shattering or epic. And also, while this next part should be obvious, spoiler, we learn through the story that Dee Dee is actually death in human form, and every 100 years she becomes mortal so she can have an understanding about the lives that she takes. So now let's take a look at the pros and cons of this story. First, the writing. Pro. The writing and dialogue is pretty spot on and has really aged well. Even now it doesn't seem dated. In the past reviews I've written on how flat or one-dimensional the dialogue came off, or how all the characters have the same personality and some none at all. That's not the case here. Death, or Dee Dee, comes off how she does in the Sandman series. Cheery, positive, life-affirming, honest, spirited, and just a little bit wise. Sexton comes off as a normal kid, snarky, annoying, confused, a bit disrespectful, talking to his mom, for example, arrogant, and a little sad. Once again, he did write a suicide note, and he was going to jump at the junkyard. At least that's what it seemed like. Another character, Mad Hetty, she may be a bit unbalanced or suffering to a degree from dementia, but you understand everything that she says, and everything that she says in the end is correct. It's right. She's not lying. Everything comes true, it seems. Con. There's a lot of writing in this book. So, of course, there's a lot of panels, which is a problem. I don't feel the art had the time to really expand and breathe and to fully express the story. Here's an example. There's an action scene in the book and it has little impact, and part of the reason is because the artist doesn't have any room to do anything. Everything is just so clustered because there's just too many panels because of all the writing. Speaking of action, I've read a few books by Neil Gaiman, and it just seems he can't write a good action scene. I've noticed this in the books of Magic, Sandman, and here as well. Admittedly, these books were near the beginning of his comic career, and I still have to reread his more current offerings as well as finish the novels that he's written. So hopefully, this has been resolved. Another con would also be the villains of the book. They are the weakest part of the story, I feel. While we need Mad Hetty to get the story started, we really didn't need the Ermite. And at the end of the story, he was literally shoved out the door. Okay, this next one really isn't a con, it's just a little nitpick. The character I wish that had more time was Foxglove. But since this was only a 4-issue series and there's already a ton of characters, I can understand why he didn't focus more on her. That said, the song she performs is important to the tone and message of the book. The dedication she gave before singing is also another nod to a character that appears in the Sandman series. Let's now take a look at the art. I first became a fan of Chris Bachalo's art at Marvel on Generation X. His art here reminds me of that style. He draws the perfect Death. Neil Adams has the perfect Batman. Chris has the perfect Death. She's perky, funny, sexy, a bit deep. It's funny, I actually like his art here better than what he does now. Both then and now, his art was quirky, fun, stylized, and had the ability to draw a lot of detail well. Also, he's able to draw faces and different races great, which a lot of artists have trouble with. But today, his characters' faces don't seem to be as expressive as they have been in the past. In the story, I know what everyone's feeling. Their faces, their body language match the writing. Lately, his art has been a bit spotty. You take a look at the person's face, you don't know if they're happy, sad. It doesn't always match up with the dialogue that's being spoken. The best quote in the book is something that Death says to Dee Dee. Life, always ends. That's what gives it its value. I'd have to say the best written moment in the story, however, is Sexton's conversation with the red-haired girl with the long gloves. It was funny, sweet, sad, and it was pretty obvious who the story she was telling him about really was about, and who she was really talking about, who her friend really was. The question is, why was she telling him the story? Does she feel that they're both kindred spirits? Well, the final pages leave us a clue. As far as the best artistic moment, I'd say there would be two. One is near the end of the story when Dee Dee and Diff finally meet and become one again, their conversation. Also, earlier in the story, is my second favorite, is when Dee Dee tells Sexton that she's really deaf. That sexy look on her face was incredible. So do I recommend this graphic novel? Yes, definitely. As I said earlier, when I first read this book, I knew very little of the Sandman series. And fortunately, even if you've never heard of Sandman, you don't need to know anything about Sandman. You can just jump right in. This book is really easy to read, and it's the perfect gateway drug to get someone into comics and change their mind about thinking about what comics are, and show them, you can really show them what comics are at their fullest potential. And that's it for right now. Please subscribe. Please check my work at www.drharris.net. Please check the Dr. Harris and the graphic description YouTube page, channels. Until next time, goodbye.
Hey, what's going on here?